I started in sales. I thoroughly enjoyed it. They were one of the fastest growing companies in the UK. So it was my first experience within Hypergrowth. We 10x revenue in just a few years. It's lagging and leading metrics to the majority of this stuff. And I think, the best leaders see the world through the eyes of their crew. If we introduce a new task or if something changes within the product, how can we constantly engineer our process and our procedures to drive, an improvement on outcome consistently? One of the things we say within the team today is knowing what not to do is equally as important as knowing what to do. Your biggest opportunity is where you are today. It's where your brand is where people know you, it's where people trust you, it's where people know what to expect from you.
Craig, welcome to the podcast, my friends. Thank you for joining.
Likewise, Omar. Thanks for having me, and thanks for having the patience as well. Doing this constant. Wow.
Not at all. But cool, Craig. If you don't mind, I would love to go back to an early stage of your career, perhaps, and ask you what your journey into customer success looked like.
Oh, it's a long time ago now, so I really am thinking back into decades. I was very fortunate, actually. I since sort of finishing university and I studied IT, I very quickly realized that during a summer job I really enjoyed a customer facing role. I thought it was definitely the where I wanted to be. I started in sales. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, being fresh out of university and suddenly having some control over your pay packet was incredibly motivating. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I found myself moving into a leadership function quite young in my career. But I don't know how well you know Wales, but we aren't the hotbed of FTSE 500 organizations. So I think the early stage of my career was really market agnostic and industry agnostic. I just kind of did anything where I could kind of utilize my skills. And I spent a few years in recruitment. I absolutely loved it. I mean, very tough industry to work in, but it teaches you a tremendous amount. I mean, you learn so much about business, you learn so much about operations, you learn so much about opportunities that are out there. And I found myself joining a FinTech organization, and they married both recruitment and finance. So being in a customer-facing role and experience in recruitment is a great opportunity for me to get into CS. And from it just grew from there. I mean, we were very fortunate. They were one of the fastest growing companies in the UK. So it was my first experience within Hypergrowth. Managed a really large team. We 10x revenue in just a few years. It was an incredible journey, and it taught me a lot. I mean, it is true what they say about startups and scale ups. It's like dog days. You develop so much faster. It's like time moves differently there. So very grateful for my experiences. And to be honest, I found what I loved. And I can't see a world where I'd potentially not want to do something aligned to CX for the foreseeable future.
Amazing. And can I ask obviously, like you said, it was an early stage startup. I think they were perhaps Series A when you joined. They then went on to 10x the revenue, like you said. Like what the CS function actually looked like when you joined, and basically the growth and the kind of scaling of this function that you witnessed.
Yeah, Sonnevig was absolutely incredible. I still got so much love for the founders for the opportunity that I got, and it was a great stage in my career. But to say it evolved quickly would be an understatement. I mean, we were taking on so many new customers month on month. It was you almost got to the end of the month and you'd need to be thinking about the next plan or next iteration. The world started out as traditional account managers because that was what the world knew at the time. And very quickly realized with any kind of SaaS platform you're dedicated to recurring revenue, really, your customers achieving, untold levels of success for that platform was key. So it took us a little while to adapt to it. But when we did, we structured the team very cleverly around our largest customers getting the most amount of attention naturally. and trying to maintain some level of operational efficiency by scaling that out then as the revenue got smaller. But I think over the course of the nearly 4 years that I was there, I think we had 4 iterations of the team. So it was quite a lot.
Wow. And like you said, I mean, then at some point, like you said, so they're winning these awards of fastest growing companies. They then raise a pretty huge Series C round of 110 plus million. In terms of, is that just extra fuel on the fire? Is that scaling like headcount, hiring rapidly? Like what goes on after such a big funding round?
It was wild. It was wild, but incredibly exciting. I mean, naturally, with a fundraise like that, your expansion of your operations happens quite quickly. So I just remember us moving into a brand new office and how wonderful that was. I remember the huge investment that went into a tech platform. CTO came from ASOS, which was really pretty cool. COO came from Barclays. So we just went on this massive expansion journey with some really clever people at the head, sort of managing all of this. I think what was the most apparent was just the size of the opportunity as well. I mean, the recruitment industry is massive within the UK, and we were one of the only organizations that could fund companies from the day of inception. So that, we had a very unique selling point. So from a new business perspective, pretty much every single startup that opened in the UK would naturally choose us as a partner. Just because of the flexibility of the solution and how easy it was for us to help people gain capital to fund their business. It was wild. And, I say again, like, there's so much of my career to be thankful for during my time there. It was a wonderful period.
And obviously you're in an extremely strong position to hit the ground running and do great at Sonovate, as you, like you said, had worked before in the recruitment. You kind of understood the business process, the customers that you're ultimately working with. And do you feel like that kind of helped you and enabled you to perform so well at Sonovate and help witness this kind of growth trajectory?
100%. I think domain expertise is so valuable, irrespective of whichever industry that you ever work in. But understanding what your customers are looking for from a level of success is pivotal to being able to offer, a solid service. And also the inverse of that as well. It's like understanding the challenges they go through and how that can directly impact an individual, somebody that may have done the exact same job as you it really helps when it comes to, problem solving, but also guiding the team or the team you're trying to build beneath you towards, ultimately making sure the customer is successful every single turn.
Amazing. And I think you kind of touched on it there, but then was this just abundantly clear then? It was like, okay, for the next, years until where we are now, that your customer success was going to be your focus, but also like FinTech and SaaS, which has been the theme of your career so far. Did you really feel like this kind of like industry fit as well?
Yeah, generally, I think I found my, I loved sales. I thoroughly enjoyed working in the industry, but I think as an individual, I appreciate balance and consistency. That's where I thrive. And I think we all know sales doesn't offer that. You told riches to be earned, but there are also the hard months, right? And I found an industry or a discipline where I was able to use the skills that I truly enjoy doing, the things that I felt I was good at, and I got to marry that with what I felt was a really noble mission around genuinely wanting people to be like unbelievably successful with a particular product or a service. I mean, and when they both came together was like a dream for me. And I think ever stepping into the world of finance, I'm fascinated by it. I've worked for 4 different organizations now within the industry, and they've all done very different things, and they've all been very clear development opportunities for me as well. Just learning various different understandings of how finance works has been mind-blowing, to be honest. And I think even though I've been in the industry for so long, there's still so much that I don't know. I really want to learn.
Okay, and of those 4 companies that you mentioned, one of which, obviously the one that you're still working now, is Pleo. I think it's 2021, perhaps, that you joined Pleo. Can I ask, what it was like joining? And I think it was a pretty exciting year for Pleo. I had to check this, doing a bit of research earlier. I think they were raising a 350 mil plus Series C rounds that year. So I imagine an extremely exciting time to join the company.
It was. And again, just, it's a small world. One of my colleagues who I worked with at Sonovate started at Pleo as a CSM, told me about a role that became available. I must have done something right because I was his leader in the previous job as well. So for him to bring me to another one, we took a risk, but you know, could very proudly say that we're very good friends as well. But I think from the very first interview I had with the people team, I fell in love with the approach to culture and the real value they put around individuals within the company and the contribution. And even though I was in a process for a few other roles at the time, I I thought this is where I need to be. Like this is what I want, and I haven't looked back. I genuinely love coming to work. I thoroughly enjoy working here.
Love to hear it, man. Love to hear it. And okay, so you're going through the process. You do make it through. Like I said, on the backdrop of Pleo raising this huge funding round. Can I ask what what the early days were like for you, onboarding and starting out in Pleo?
I think we're no different to any other organization that'll go on this massive expansion route. And there are a few things that naturally need to remain close to heart when you do this. So first and foremost, looking at your operation today, I mean, is it set up to succeed? When any organization takes on a substantial sum of investment, there's an expectation that is aligned to that. And typically, or previously, outside of the new world, that was generally aligned to like untold levels of growth. And in order to do that and sustain it, the foundations of your department is key. So whilst this is very specific to Pleo, it's actually suitable for any organization. At the time, we were what we call cradle to grave. So a customer would come through the funnel, and you would manage that customer through the entire onboarding process and through adoption and renewal. But recognizing that those two roles, or three roles to be precise, like have very different skill sets. One of the first things we did was carve out specialist teams around those. And we immediately saw some incredible improvements just on efficiency in terms of having people dedicated to a specific discipline. We also saw a huge reduction in churn almost instantly, again, for the same reason. You have people dedicated towards certain jobs with certain goals. They're all raveled around or wrapped around the customer. But ultimately, once we landed on that shape, that's now changed again, like multiple times. It has to adapt and it has to change with the demands of the market, but also the demands of growth. So what we experienced in the early days was incredible, but for a very different reason why today is also incredible.
Interesting that you change once and then change twice again. And from my point of view, like every CS leader or CSM that I speak to, their company has a very different way of running it. Some are doing everything after sales. Some have more tightly defined roles. Some have account managers, some don't. Can I ask you, obviously, like you said, you redesigned this, you implemented it, you've done it again. What are you kind of looking for when you realize that a process needs changing, that it needs adapting, and how you go about basically just dividing up the responsibilities to suit the need of the customers?
Great question. I think there's lagging and leading metrics to the majority of this stuff. And I think, the best leaders see the world through the eyes of their crew. So the first thing you got to listen to your team. Like, what are your team telling you? They'll know if something is working really well or not. That's your early stage indicator. Like, are the team happy? Is the job design rallied around them being successful? Ultimately, personally, I would hinge very heavily on the service profit chain model and knowing that happy employees create a profitable organization. And in order to do that, there are a series of steps that you need to go through. But then you have your lagging indicators, like what is the performance metrics? Are we seeing everything going in the right way? And that will generally be a strong indicator towards are you doing the right things right now? And let's not forget, CS, it's very young. I mean, first versions of it happened years ago, but really coined as a profession, 2016, 2007? So when you're comparing the maturity of CS to sales, so that is literally one of the first ever professions to exist in the world. Naturally, we're a little bit behind on metric-driven performance. So we've worked tremendously hard over the last few years alongside some incredibly bright people who are able to analyze data through a large scale aggregation analysis to pick out like what are the earliest stages that a customer may find themselves traveling down a slippery slope. And we've rallied the team around 5 key pillars that we know have a positive impact on a customer's journey with us. And that's what we rally around, or around our leading metrics. But even though we've decided on those, we decided on them a year ago, every quarter they're iterated on. Right, okay, this is what we've achieved this quarter. Can we change it? If we just change a word in an email, are we going to influence the outcome in any way, shape, or form? If we introduce a new task, or if something changes within the product, how can we constantly engineer our process and our procedures to drive, an improvement on outcome consistently? And I think as a byproduct, also, it keeps the job really fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, our average tenure within the role far surpasses anything in the market average. And I think that's for a multitude of reasons. I'm very fortunate to work with a wonderful leadership team. I'm very fortunate to work with an incredible support team. And we continuously iterate the role. A byproduct of that is nearly the entirety of the team are involved in these quarterly projects. So not only are they developing in various forms of business, but they're also engineering their own job. So I think there's so much to be said for that, having people tied into certain goals and ensuring that everybody's working in the same way. So as a global team, we're all pulling in the same direction, whilst changing, because it's tough. But I love it. It's great.
Amazing. And like you say, the great thing is everyone is involved, everyone is pulling in the direction. But can I ask, like, how you can organically make this happen? As Pleo are now, I imagine, a pretty big CS function. I think having a quick search on LinkedIn is 50 plus, perhaps, in the team. Like, how you as a leader basically not only kind of set the direction, and especially when you're like referring to like the 5 pillars that you want to be focused on, the metrics that you want to focus on, how you as a leader make sure everyone is aligned and moving in the same direction.
I mentioned this in a previous conversation as well. You can steal a little bit of Ben Horowitz here. It's like the GOAT, right? So vision, followership, and execution. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And like I said, I'm very fortunate to work with an incredible leadership team here, including my boss, around setting what I believe is a very compelling vision. We rally the team around that vision. We focus really hard on creating followership, and a big part of that is our virtues. And we have a few virtues that we've chosen from. The team have actually chosen. We've engineered those as part of our mission and vision, and is one. So we would rather give something a go today, realize it doesn't work, and sit on it and try to plan for another 3 months. A byproduct of that is it lends very heavily into our iterative culture. We've got work above individuals. Collectively, we always look out what's best for everybody. And work above dreams. They're all really important to us. And then finally, 90% of life is how you look at it. Only 10% is what happens to you. And I think working in a startup where everything changes and is so dictated to by the market, if you have a glass half full vision or view of the world, everything is easier. Everything is easy. So, I mean, we've got to a point now where that's more self-governed. I'm very proud to be a part of the team that I'm part of. Every day I come to work, so grateful that each and every single one of the guys that I get to work with, and long may that continue.
Amazing to hear it, and amazing to hear how much of because like when we a lot of talk about iteration and speaking to customers and your employees is very much like a startup mindset. Like it might be something that we talked about more about like your time at Sonovate or something like that. Can I ask how? And the last stat I could get from Crunchbase was, or TechCrunch was, a thought that Pleo has 30,000 plus business customers active. How do you keep this iteration, and especially when it's coming to processes and touch points that perhaps over 30,000 customers are relying on?
And the short answer is I got a great boss. The long answer is that we have had, I think, sort of 3 to 4 versions of how the team looks today. And much like any other organization, 80% of your revenue is generated by 20% of your customers. And I think that carries through through the majority of business. And we're no different. So we just make sure that we've leaned in very heavily to the digital form of success. And we have an incredible team that works in that department or that area. So we're able to essentially hyper-personalized content to a mass market whilst being very reactive to the needs that come off the back of it, which is really cool, if you ask me. But if we go further up the funnel to the mid-market and enterprise, which is where I kind of specialize, we've focused, we have, again, through people that are far more intelligent than I am, we've developed what is an engine that help guide our CSMs with dynamic triggers based on experiences our customers are having at any given point. So we can pick out what we know are the most impactful reasons or impactful opportunities for us to drive adoption of a particular feature, or we know when to come to the rescue. This means as a byproduct, we've managed to remain incredibly efficient from a portfolio volume-wise, whilst making sure that customers don't suffer. And it's really cool. It is cool. Like, there's no other way of putting it. It's pretty cool.
Amazing. And okay, so you start off, I think it is perhaps regional manager for perhaps 4 markets, which then becomes the whole of Europe, then becomes director of customer success. Could you perhaps speak to, we've talked about Pleo scaling the function, the customer growth, but your own kind of personal development journey at Pleo?
Yeah, look, again, I feel like he's getting too much credit in this now, but good boss. Yeah. I have genuinely I'm very clear about my aspirations in the working world, right? So my ultimate goal is to be the go-to person to speak to if you're scaling in FinTech, right? That is the goal. So I have had the opportunity, particularly where I'm working now, with just the sheer level of growth and the expansion of the organization, to do so many things. And I mean this in the most humble way possible. If I had to write a CV today, it would be about 4 pages long. Just So, and that's just things that we've done because as an organization, like I say, like, I'm incredibly proud to work with, just because of the sheer amount of things that we've achieved in very short succession. So I think a lot of it comes through trial and error, ultimately. There are very few organizations out there that have gone through the level of expansion that we've gone through, and as a byproduct, despite us having kind of a ruthless appetite for learning and development and book clubs and all forms of external influences, ultimately you still have to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. And if there's anything I could be proud of the team, is how well they've adopted that. And we've made every mistake possible, I think, but we've also got to the successes really quickly. And one of the things we say within the team today is knowing what not to do is equally as important as knowing what to do. So we know a lot of what not to do these days.
Amazing to hear it. And okay, so you are customer success director of customer success now, which I think from a lot of customer success managers, first-time leaders, is a aspirational career goal that they have, and not all have the network and ability, as I'm doing now, to be able to speak with customer success directors. Can I ask just what is day-to-day life like as a director of customer success, what you are responsible for, and essentially what it takes to lead at this level?
Crikey, that's massive. I'll give him a best shot. Okay, so day to day. So again, stealing a little bit from Ben Horowitz around vision, follow-up, and execution. So we've worked really hard as a collective team to develop the first part, the vision, and we have the follow-up behind it. Now, execution for me largely revolves around just ensuring we're heading in the right direction and looking 2 to 3 or 4, 5 months ahead, and what potential changes we come up against in the organization. Now, how are trends for LMRR? What can we do today to potentially impact the results of 6 months from now? And just ensure that I've got a strong internal leadership team, which I have. They are incredible. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else without them. But equally ensuring that they are all armed with everything that they need in order to do their roles successfully as well. And as long as I can make sure I'm keeping an eye out for any obstacles and challenges ahead and ensuring that the team are prepared for them before we get there and we can adjust our course accordingly, I'm doing a pretty solid job. And I like to think I can do that well, but you'll have to ask me, I guess. On my journey to get here, like I never give up. You just can't. Like I'm a big believer in hard work. I'm a big believer. Like my parents have to tell me you got to work smarter, not harder. But I don't see why you can't do both. So the myself, the team as a byproduct, we're extremely hardworking, and you could be the most hardworking person in the room, but ultimately there's still a knowledge gap that you need to close. So exposing yourself to the right projects and ensuring that you know the right people within your organization who, even if you can't pick up large chunks of work, you can at least observe and understand the decision making behind such projects or even directions will help close that gap. And then ensuring that you've actually really learned it and understood it is critical, because then applying that at a later date is going to be the most telling topic. And it's something that myself and the team do regularly as we do courses together, just to ensure that we're all doing similar content, we're all learning together, we can have conversations about it. We ensure that everybody is traveling at the same trajectory.
Okay, and on this kind of learning and personal development side of things, offline, we've had lots of conversations about, and I know you care very much deeply about developing leaders and people who want to transition to leaders, first-time leaders. Obviously, this is something that you have now done a lot at Pleo. Could I ask you the kind of stage that you think that a CSM should really be at when they want to start? Maybe they have this ambition, and when is the time kind of right? Probably how long is this piece of string kind of question, but the time that they should start to seriously think about moving into leadership.
I think you never judge an elephant by its ability to climb a tree, and leadership requires a very different skill than being. I see there's lots of cross transferables. I mean, managing your own portfolio, especially to the standards most organizations would ask for, is tough, and you are. Ultimately, you're the CEO of your own portfolio, and you have to treat it like it was your own business. So there are a lot of similarities, but equally, leadership requires a different skill set. One of the processes I like to go through with a lot of the aspiring leaders is first and foremost, before you're ready, why do you even want to be one? Like why? Like there are so many wonderful roles out there now, and gone are the days where you have to be a leader to earn more money. Like ICs have this incredible opportunity out there to earn the cash. So what is it about the leadership that really attracts you to the role? And how do you want to be perceived as a leader? How do you not want to be? Is equally important. I know that I fell on that very early in my career. I was very fortunate to have a great leader and a not so great leader. So within my first few roles, I knew very quickly how I didn't want to lead. And naturally, you make a lot of mistakes along the way as well. I mean, what are you going to miss from your current job? You have to be able to answer all of these questions. And I think when you get to the bottom of it, your motivations to become one, then you'll know where the gap is. I mean, big part of the exercise I do with the team is like who genuinely inspires you in a leadership function that's really close to home, that you have access to have a conversation with, and potentially somebody that's maybe a bit further afield, industry leaders and so on and so forth. And where's the commonality? Like, what is it about the two that really inspire you? And once you can answer all of these questions, you can create an idea of what you want to do or what you want to be, and then you've got the gap. You've got the gap between where you're at today and where you want to be. And with any projects, then it's just about ensuring that you put in the right steps to get there. And that's why I genuinely enjoy being a mentor. That's why because I love to see people win. I just love to see people win. It's a great feeling. For me, it's what sales used to do earlier in my career.
Okay, so say the CSM has gone through this, they have thought about their why, what kind of leader they want to be, what kind of leader they don't want to be. They've perhaps identified this gap, or perhaps they need to figure out what this gap is, but they are convinced that they do want to be this leader. Do you have any then advice from that point on, that they have done the introspection on how they can best prepare for when the opportunity arises to move into leadership?
Yeah, I think I'd always start internally first. I mean, 9 times out of 10, there's somebody in that organization is going to want to see you succeed, and is going to want to take the time of day to help you close that gap, or help you get you to where you want to be. So I'd always start internally, and once you've exhausted all of those avenues, if you know you're ready, then only then would I start to look externally. Your biggest opportunity is where you are today. It's where your brand is where people know you, it's where people trust you, is where people know what to expect from you. Stepping into a new organization as a leader, especially if there's already a team there, it's quite a tough job. It's no matter how experienced you are, they were led a certain way. There's a certain culture. There's a certain way of working. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it was always good, but whether they had a bad experience or a great experience, there's an experience that they're going to compare you to. So that's quite challenging as a first-time leader. And you can take a few bruises, but as long as you're resilient and you're prepared to work hard, and you have a mindset of wanting to get better, then believing yourself that you can do it. But this is fundamentally why I think it's so important to understand why you want to do it. Because when you do come up against those tough days, the hurdles, the obstacles, the no's in the interview, or you've got a reason to want to try again. If it's just money, it doesn't last. It's not worth the days. It's definitely not worth the days. I can tell you that for sure.
And okay, so on this point, so then CSM does make it into leadership either within their own company or an external move. Can I ask, what the first-time leaders should be thinking about in those early days, those first couple of months? Perhaps they've been a team player, now they are the team leader. What should be going through their head?
Depends on, if you're moving from an existing team today into a leadership perspective, that can be quite challenging for a very different reason, right? I mean, you're working alongside somebody today, and the next day they're your boss. I think in scenarios like that, it's ensure that you draw a line, and you draw an agreement and respect early on. It can be difficult. It can be even more difficult if you're friends. If you're stepping into a new role, I think you've got to glue yourself to your team in the earlier days. It's really important that from the get-go, everybody understands your leadership style. What it is you bring to the table. Equally, it's really important to understand is what are your expectations? What are their expectations of you? Because no doubt there'll be some misalignment there. So ironing those out early doors will be critical. From there onwards, I focus on 3 key pillars with any single one of my teams, which is happiness, value, and support. I'm a firm believer that if you've created the right vision, you've got the right KPIs, if you drill down on hard on making sure everybody's happy, they feel supported, and they feel valued, they'll do great work. And you don't need to do anything else.
Beautiful. Okay. And we kind of mentioned it briefly before, but I'll kind of ask you in another way, kind of zooming out on just the broader trajectory of your career and the position that you are in now. Can I ask how important you feel like mentorship has played a role in your career, both as that mentor figure now, like you said, in your team, but also perhaps if you were being the mentee and being mentored throughout your career as you came up?
I do it today because I wish I had it when I was younger. That is fundamentally the reason. Why. If I like to believe this, whether or not it's true or not, that's why. There's an air of confidence here. If I'd had the right person coming out of university and beyondwards, I would be much further ahead today than where I am. It's not to say that I don't love where I am. I'm very proud of everything achieved in my career to date. And I'm very confident that I'm going to do a lot more. But it's an incredibly powerful tool that it's a massive opportunity to take a shortcut in knowing what you don't know. And that is a very hard obstacle to climb.
Glad to hear it, Craig. Final question before I let you go. What advice would you give either to a younger Craig earlier on in the career, or perhaps anyone listening to this in customer success, earlier stages of their career, on how they could build a career they can be proud of?
Right, yeah, that's a good one. Don't give up. Know your worth, and everything works out.
Love it. Epic advice, Craig. We'll end on that note. Thank you again. Thank you, Anne, for being so great, for your time today. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Thank you for listening to another amazing episode of Go-to-Market Leader Stories, which today is brought to you by Stack's Customer Success Mentorship Program. By joining our program, we will match you with a VP, Director, or Head of Customer Success from a top SaaS scale-up who will mentor you on a one-to-one basis to support your personal and professional career development. On top of that, we'll also give you access to our amazing community platform where you'll be able to connect with all the customer success leaders that we have at Stacked, find jobs, hire candidates for your team, see and attend events upcoming in the customer success calendar, and a whole bunch of other awesome features. If this sounds interesting, you can book a completely free trial mentorship session today. Head over to stack.so and take the next step. Otherwise, see you on the next episode.